Hello everybody, my name is Ratnos and welcome to This Week in Mythic Plus. This week's affixes are Fortified, Bursting, Volcanic, of course Prideful, and this is the best week on the calendar for the purposes of pushing high keys. So this is the week where you're going to see the highest keys done, probably several of the top 20, most of the top 20 I would expect. Keys on the leaderboards are going to be filled this week. There are a couple of other good weeks coming soon as well. A lot of the other Fortified weeks that are coming up are pretty good as well, so we may even see some of those times surpassed as new strategies evolve, if dungeons get further nerfed, which we do have some dungeon nerfs coming in this week again, and I would say they've been happening more than half of the weeks in the last couple months, so it's something that does keep happening. But it's unlikely that we will get back to this affix combo before 9.1. It's possible, but if you look at the calendar, and this is something I got a lot of questions about last week when I talked about this. If you look at the calendar, right, the week starting here on Tuesday the 2nd of March, and it's 12 weeks until we would get back to this affix combo. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We would need to get to the end of May without 9.1 coming out, which I think it's feasible that, I think that this is one of the more likely days for 9.1 to come out, but as soon as it does, it's likely that there will be either some kind of off-season or go straight into the new affix, some kind of thing like that. So for many teams, this is going to be that best week, especially if they are fully geared, if they have all the items that they're going to be looking for. It's also definitely the last, even if we get back to it here and it's still 9.0, which is possible, they haven't announced the 9.1 release date, it's certainly the last time before 9.0.5, which could be in the very near future. So for all that, you're going to see a lot of Twitch streaming of very high keys done this week. A lot of exciting stuff to spectate for sure. Doesn't necessarily mean that this is going to be the best week for your weekly keys. The Volcanic part is pretty good across the board. Almost every group finds Volcanic to be the easiest on that row. Bursting, it's a little bit less true. If you are lacking a geared healer in particular, a geared or skilled healer, it is an affix that in a lot of environments can be pretty rough on you. And it's not even just the healer that manages the bursting affix. Although I would say it's more the healer than previous expansions because they have the ability to dispel stuff than in previous expansions. So it feels like DPS more often just ignore it and just tell the healer to heal it. But if you're in a group that's in a lower keystone level, blasting through everything really fast, and your healer is 10 or 15 item levels lower than everybody, it can be a pretty tough affix. So just because you're seeing the super top level teams finding this week to be one of the better ones, it doesn't mean that it is going to be true all the way down. That it's the best one, at least. It's probably still one of the easier ones for almost all groups. So, without further ado, let's get into dungeon by dungeon stuff. If you're interested in grabbing any of my routes, by the way, they're available on Raider.io, where Raider.io is also running a competition thing this week, where the top run of each dungeon this week, all 5 players involved will get 1 store mount, limit 1 mount per person. So if you want to find out more about that, I'll have a link about that in the description below as well. My suspicion is, if it's not something that's just easy to show up and start competing for. It's going to be teams that already played together for several weeks that'll be up there. So that's. But I think it'll be a nice little reward for them, and be interesting to see them compete. So it should be pretty cool. Also, so on the topic of the routes on Raider.io. I have made some adjustments this week to the skips routes in Plaguefall and Sanguine Depths. Most of the other routes are basically unchanged. So if you have previous week routes, like last week's routes or the week before for most of the other dungeons, then you can keep using them. You don't need to go re-download them. But I do have some tweaks that I think make the Plaguefall and Sanguine Depths skips ones slightly better. So let's do it. Let's go dungeon by dungeon. Start off with the other side, as we always do, because it is at the top of the list. This dungeon, it's the good week for it. This is I think, indisputably the best affix combo for this dungeon in particular, because Volcanic, not really punishing anywhere. Bursting, you're not really doing any. I mean, you'll pull some large amounts of enemies in this area from time to time, but it's not something where there's like lots of little things that burst. There's not really any particular areas that should cause a problem with these affixes. And Fortified, of course, it's very favorable in this dungeon relative to Tyrannical, in particular because there are several tough bosses and bosses that scale increasingly with Tyrannical, right? Like Hakar. We talk about this on the MDI broadcast a lot, but this is a boss where you add 20% health to this thing and you get way more than 20% more time because you get all these extra blood barriers that are even bigger than before and have more targets to hit. And, you know, those sorts of effects compound and mean that the bosses take quite a bit longer here. And of course, it's 30% more health, not 20% with Tyrannical. And of course, the Muezala ads also scale with Tyrannical. So it's nice that it's Fortified. It's nice that it's Fortified for those reasons. The Tyrannical nerf, by the way, for a little tangent here, I think if they did that one more time, I think if they nerfed it down to 20% actually from 30, I think it'd be pretty much set. I don't know how you guys' experience has been, depending on what key level you've been playing at, but it felt like a really good step in the right direction. But it still feels like the Fortified keys are just that little bit easier. But I think it was like halfway towards the nerf that brings Tyrannical into line with Fortified. Anyways, Halls of Atonement. Okay, so a couple spots here you actually do need to watch out for Volcanic in. For instance, the Echelon situation. If you're getting stunned while there are ads still active, you can actually get in some volcanic trouble in this area. So try and make sure you kill off those ads prior to the stun coming out, or potentially save a dispel if you have multiple curse dispels. You know, save one for if you can react to volcanoes spawning other people. I mean, it's not really something that happens that often. One thing to remember about how Volcanic functions is basically every mob that's in combat might try to spawn volcanoes, and so you'll get more of them as you're in combat with more stuff. But every single one will always only spawn volcanoes under targets that it's not in melee with, right? So if you can get into melee range of all targets with which you're in combat, you'll never have a volcano spawn off of, like, targeting you. And so this can be good on this boss. You know, if there are a bunch of ads and you're getting stunned, you can get near them, potentially in melee range with a couple of them. You gotta be careful, right? Because the stun is also followed by the leap. But you can use this sometimes to prevent the possibility of getting 6 volcanoes under you in a short period of time while you're stunned and dying as a result. Yeah, other than that, Affix not too impactful here. No big stuff to mention. Gone to Mysterious Scythe, where also not too much to talk about here in terms of the affixes. Just run through the dungeon in a straight line, kill the stuff. I don't know. I can't really think of any areas that are going to be problematic for these affixes. So, shortest segment in history. I'll go on to Plaguefall. Where I haven't set the affix correctly. Okay, Plaguefall. Important thing to note is that the gushing slimes in this first boss room, for some reason, these ones do trigger on death affixes, so these will burst, and that is extremely dangerous if you go into this area and you don't have something like a Mass Dispel to clear all of your bursting stacks or a bunch of immunities and stuff. So consider slowing down how you're going to pull this room. I'm going to put a note in here in the route before I post it up, and maybe even I'll cut this thing into 2 pulls to just emphasize that is something that you need to be extremely vigilant of, because you don't want to wipe to that. If you do, it's near the start of the dungeon, so it's not a big deal, but yeah, don't want to wipe. Sanguine Depths, so here was one where my skips route, I've changed it up a little bit, so we're skipping this nonsense here. It's worth noting, by the way, this is something that my route doesn't do, but something you can do is if you're interested in not pulling the Overseer or the Chamber Sentinel, you can actually do it by tagging the one on the other side. So if you like taunt this guy or throw an axe at him or whatever, these 2 mobs will pull and this one won't, as long as you're like standing back over here. And similarly, if you throw an axe at this guy, these 2 will pull and this one won't. So that's a useful thing to consider if you're ever in the process of making a route yourself. It is something worth considering, and it's something I've been thinking a little bit about doing. May see some updates, because there actually has been Sanguine Depths tuning this week. So here's what's happened. We have Wicked Oppressors getting a nerf here, a cast frequency reduction, and a cast time increase on Rack Soul. good good change there, and particularly one that I like is the Mist Dancer. Damage reduction less relevant for high-end groups where this is getting pretty one-shotty, but for everybody, the cast less frequently part of this, depending on what number they've chosen, is going to be extremely nice, because this was an ability that denied a lot of area very quickly. I don't know how often you had this happen to you in your runs where you're like fighting this Mist Dancer and like 30 seconds into the pull, every time it casts, the entire corridor is just covered in images casting again. So this is an extremely welcome change, and you love to see it. So, and then finally you have General Call's health being reduced by 10% just during the Gauntlet event. So my understanding on how this is going to work, and we'll have to test to make sure, is that so she spawns right now and she has this set amount of health. My understanding is she's still going to have that same, like, so you'll go through the Gauntlet, but she'll have 10% less health, 10% less than this on whatever key level you're doing. And so each stage is going to require 10% less damage. Pretty intuitive there. And then at 70% health, she gets here and she like runs through here, and then she actually despawns and respawns as the boss version. And then her health will scale back up to the old value, but she'll still be at 70%. So, because it's a little weird, right? It's a little weird for a mob's health to change only during one part of a dungeon, but that's my suspicion on how it'll work. So the boss fight should be unaffected, and it should be 10% less damage required during each stage here. There are a lot of ways that they could code that thing to work that would have different effects, but those would be weird, so hopefully they don't do anything weird. Spires of Ascension, no changes to this dungeon. No areas of extreme note either. One thing you want to watch out for, these things actually trigger their on-death affixes a little bit later than you'd expect. So they will burst, but they'll burst like 3 or 5 seconds after they die. It's not particularly relevant because there's only one, maybe two things dying at once if you're feeling ambitious. So not something super important, but interesting. That's all I got for you on this place. Necrotic Wake. Necrotic Wake's actually the dungeon that I've spent the longest fiddling with my route, and I have yet to come up with a pathing that's better than this one that I feel like most groups would find like accessible. It doesn't do like any super weird stuff. But I don't know. This is one that I'm curious to see what you guys have for this dungeon. So if anybody has any hot tech for Necrotic Wake, or any of my pulls that are like particularly bad and easy to swap into something better, let me know for either the skips or no skips route. Of course, you gotta obey the law of no skips if you're suggesting things for this route. But yeah, other than that, nothing too impactful here. You can use so one thing to note in this dungeon, the shields that are left lying around, not particularly useful for a lot of stuff. A lot of groups will kind of just ignore them. Actually pretty good if a DPS player or a tank just grabs one and fires it off when you're dealing with a couple stacks of bursting. It's an AoE damage reduction effect. I can't say I know exactly 100% for sure how it works, because it's just used so rarely. But I think that carrying one of those things around and then using it on a bursting stack when you don't have anything else that you'd be doing anyways if you're not the healer is a pretty good use of that thing. So yeah, consider that. And finally, Theater of Pain. This dungeon still got the same route change last week that was suggested to me, and I'm pretty delighted with how it's working out, actually. This one is, this is the with skips route, and the idea is you just pop downstairs, grab an extra pack in the Kultharok wing, and that gets you Pride onto Kultharok, and then you kill this pack, Shroud or Invis Pot, do Gore Chop, and you get Pride onto Gore Chop, come back up here, kill this guy, leave these things skipped entirely, and then you do this wing, you get Pride onto Zav, bang, Pride onto all 3 bosses, no backtracking. Very cool. Very cool pathing. I think it'll work out well this week. Nothing too... I've heard rumors of Volcanic killing people in the duel. I don't know if those are 100% true. I haven't seen it myself, but maybe watch out for that. Maybe make sure you're not taking a Volcano when you're low in the duel. So I don't know. I'd I do not want to be the person to test this, but if you are, let me know how that works. Yeah, those are the dungeons. Not too much to say about any of them in particular this week, and I've avoided going off on quite as many tangents as I did last week, so I think that'll be about where we end the dungeon by dungeon part. I know last week I said I was going to try and make some more videos, and then I failed to do so, but this week for sure, there's no way I would fail to make any additional videos this week, so stay tuned to the channel. Remember to hit subscribe and stuff if you want to find the new videos. Check out my Twitch stream, twitch.tv/Ratnos. And yeah, sorry for the lack of content recently. Been a little burned out on WoW. I've been kind of just trying to delay making content until I was back into it more. But I don't know, if that doesn't happen soon, I'll just expand, make some other game content of some kind. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see how things go. I'm pretty excited for 9.0.5 when that comes out. We get Valor points, and I can start gearing my alts through dungeons rather than through PvP, because it's kind of a crushing. Like, I don't want to do PvP, but it's by far the best way to gear up an alt right now. Just spend a couple days blasting, and you can get full good gear very quickly. So hopefully the Valor point system is enough of a smooth sailing path to gearing alts. Anyways, I said I did a good job of not going on any tangents, and then I did right now, so I'm going to stop the video. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.